Welcome to the Game Day Playbook, presented by FanFood, a discussion around how leaders are transforming the sports and live entertainment industry by leveraging technology to enhance the fan experience and operate game day more efficiently. I'm your host, Rob Cressy, and joining me today is Carson Goodale, CEO of FanFood. Carson, great to have you back on the show.
Hey, it's great to see you. How are things? How are you?
Absolutely amazing now that I'm talking to you. And we last spoke on a podcast at the end of March, and this was right when the pandemic started. And we were talking about the evolution of things and how we were going to be doing things moving forward. Well, guess what? We're now recording this at the beginning of August, and we want to reevaluate this and see, hey, how are we innovating digitally? What opportunities do we see out there in the market? What challenges are there out there in the market? And also, we want to talk about the evolution of this podcast as well, because we both believe in, as I sort of say, eating your own dog food. Because if we innovate as business leaders, well, guess what? This podcast is going to need to innovate as well. Well, let's start with this. Where are things at right now with FanFood, and what has sort of evolved since March until now?
Well, I think, the big thing has been, as a growth venture-backed startup, we had, a lot of resources focused on acquiring locations and properties in collegiate for, and high school sports and athletic events, as well as like minor league sports and professional sports. And obviously when COVID hit, oh shit, what are we going to do? Need to pivot. Because, right, as a growing startup, there's never enough cash and time in a day. So, and fortunate for enough, we had a couple of other, I would say non-traditional F&B kind of outlets in other markets under hospitality. And what we did was we tripled down on those. We really focused a lot of our time, energy, sales and marketing, product resources on those customers. And that resulted in us expanding, in those areas. And it has allowed us for us to maintain a growth, upward. So we're pretty fortunate.
How important has the cashless side of things been in general? Because as we look at the landscape right now, cashless is almost like the way that things are completely. I think about my first experience going anywhere in Chicago, and we're scanning QR codes, and I'm not even using my wallet anymore. They're like, hey, you can do this all on your phone.
Yeah, kind of refreshing, right? For the folks that have been trying to start businesses for the last 6 years, we've been preaching cashless and touchless and everything. And all of a sudden, what was once, for the product and service that we were building in our original go-to-markets were all around that concept. But what was interesting was the buyers kind of regarded FanFood as like a nice to have or a convenient solution, on-demand solution, whereas now in this post-COVID world that we live in, and, touchless is, top of mind, it's a must-have solution.
And it's interesting because what you're really talking about is being forward thinking, but now that becomes a necessity where, like you said, well, you know what? The reason you're going to get a lot of excuses for why you can't do it. Well, now all of a sudden the demand from everywhere, and this isn't even just customer demand, this is now like health demand is saying you must do this.
Yeah. And what are businesses doing about that, and where are they going? I think there's so much that can be Googled from a digital products and services perspective. That's partially the reason why we chose to pivot this podcast, because I think the focus was there for sports stadiums and the like to provide this. The purpose of this, right, podcast was to provide some of that best practices and forward thinking thought leadership to folks within the industry. So you didn't have to reinvent the wheel. And so now what we're looking to do is how can we help those kind of customers modernize that entire experience? And how can we, when I say we, the podcast, that we have here help support that.
Yeah, so this is a great segue because let's talk now about the pivoting of the podcast. I know right before this, we were talking about the description of it because when we create a podcast, we want to be very value driven. We think about what can we do to give forward thinking perspectives in the worlds of customer experience and technology, because very much this is the world FanFood lives in. So let's find other like-minded leaders out there. Let's have conversations with them so that we can go and help others, whether we work directly with you or indirectly.
That's it. That's the name of the game.
So we will be sharing more information about the evolution of the podcast, likely within the next month, if not sooner. There's things that we just need to firm up on it, but I'm really excited about this next evolution because what it's really going to do is allow us to widen our net of potential thought leaders that we can bring on all within the world of technology in terms of how can we make the customer experience better. And that's been a core tenet from day one for everything that we've done with the podcast, because we've always talked about enhancing the fan experience. And what we're really doing is evolving fan into customer. A fan is a customer of yours, but customer is a lot more broad because fan oftentimes has a connotation of just sports. And we're branching out to more than just the sports world.
Yeah. And I think that's it, really. I think you hit the nail on the head there. So
I'm curious to hear from you as we get back to the business side of things, you as a leader of FanFood, and what have you been learning, and sort of take us into your mindset of leadership during this time?
Well, it's definitely challenging. I would say, when we had certain expectations and plans, right? As we were getting ready to ramp, I was super excited to realize a lot of new customers this summer, spring, from spring sports, and to see and get feedback. But, the way that I look at this event from a leadership perspective, there's two approaches that a company could take, right? There's a defensive strategy and an offensive strategy. And then our data, I'm a data-driven kind of person. And so our data suggested that it probably wouldn't be in our best interest to go from a defensive strategy. By defensive, we mean, pausing until events to return, right? And so I wanted to give the opportunity to test new markets. Right. Let's take a look at the data and how can we kind of repivot or reallocate our resources to focus on new areas of opportunity that we otherwise would not have had it not been for COVID. And so some of the examples that our company is doing or how we are pivoting is we're focusing in on Chicago, residential bill, offering the ability for these residents inside these buildings to order food from local restaurants and local food trucks to have a regular food delivery service. And why we're excited about that is because the alternative is a Grubhub or Uber Eats model. And that model got a lot of backlash when that became the only means of keeping lights on for a lot of these businesses throughout America. And their primary business model relied on taking heavy commissions. So despite the fact that, these third-party F&B aggregators were driving more digital customers to their platforms, to their restaurants, not making them more money. It's not making the restaurants more money. So we're fortunate in the position because we have an online and mobile ordering platform where we can pivot our business model. We can make it a 100% commission free. And that resonates with me because we can create a real impact during this time. And so, for us at FanFood, it's kind of a natural pivot in terms of resource allocation because it's not just selling. You're like impact selling right now. There's a purpose behind what you're doing. And it's something that's really resonating with our team.
And one other area that I've noticed that you and FanFood have innovated on is on the content side of things. Certainly, you've been forward thinking and having this podcast, but guess what else I'm seeing from you? Webinars, your ability to connect with others and deliver value by creating something that 6 months ago may not have been in place.
Yeah, and I think, pre-COVID, FanFood, I love the name FanFood, right? We were focused on building a brand. When COVID hit and we pivoted to a completely new industry and we're targeting new markets that we have never been in before, the brand's not going to resonate with the customer. So what are we doing? What are we building? We have a great product. Let's double down on that. So a lot of our content related things are also very product and feature functionality oriented with intent to show or highlight to potential prospects and leads of our capabilities and why that might be a more attractive alternative to what exists in the marketplace, because it's essentially free. It's no upfront cost to you. It's only upside potential.
Yeah, and I think what it does a really good job of is, one, it gets a conversation started. Two, it delivers value. And three, it really allows your brand heartbeat to shine. I'm someone who is such a proponent of things that are hard to do, or at least the perception of them: podcast, video, live stream, webinar. Why do I like those things? Because those are the things that everybody loves to make excuses on. Oh, we can't do that. We don't have the time, knowledge, budget, resources. Well, great. I'm like, well, there's my opportunity. If everybody else thinks that's too hard for them, let that be the thing that we double down on. And oh, by the way, it's more high touch, because so often we want to do the least amount of work for the biggest result. Well, wait a second. Things have kind of changed right now where you almost want to be doing everything. And if you can do something that is going to allow people to be like, wait a second, that's Carson, the CEO of FanFood, on this webinar. Now you're perceived as a thought leader, and people can put a name and face to the brand. And there's so many brands out there that are faceless where you don't ever hear from them other than just, here's a white paper.
Yeah, I mean, totally. I think, and candidly, I was probably one of those people pre-COVID that wanted to go for the biggest opportunity and the biggest fish and, create our resources around that. But it ended up kind of working out to our advantage, because when COVID hit, you really start to hone in on where are we going to be spending our time? What's the best use of our time? And what we're finding is the best use of our time in terms of resource allocation are in markets that we've acquired recently, and not something that we've been focused on for the last few years.
So with this, what opportunities are you seeing in the market right now? So let's look forward, because I love to give a forward-thinking perspective on this, because anyone listening can say, wow, I like the way that Carson is thinking about these things, because I can potentially apply that into my business.
Yeah, I mean, if you haven't digitized everything yet, then you're already a step behind. So you could probably get caught up to speed by listening to this podcast. I think what I'm very focused on right now is this idea or concept, and it was interesting too, so it's relevant. Did you catch how the four tech leaders, Amazon, FANG, so your Facebook, Amazon, not Netflix, Google, and who's the other one? Facebook, Mark Zuckerberg. We're all brought in by Congress to get essentially grilled for a few hours and looking for the responses about antitrust laws. And at what point does the federal government have a right to step in and say you're too big? And I think it's funny, because if I'm looking forward, I believe that everything will start to become more localized and more advantageous for the small businesses. And from a marketing perspective, I think that customers, when Lyft and Uber Eats and stuff came out, I believed technology was diminishing brand equity, because what consumers really cared about is as long as I can get my shit as fast as possible and as conveniently as possible, like, that's really what all I care about. Whereas now, and I think, you know, COVID definitely, you know, put a microscope under some of the businesses. Are there a more business friendly alternative? And what I think, or what I see happening, is that the brands that create marketing campaigns and awareness around like their impact and the impact that they're trying to create will resonate tenfold in this new world that we live in. And I might even say I will wait an extra 5 or 10 minutes because I know that my dollar is going to something good. So it's interesting, you know, convenience and on demand, where I thought was taking a seat over that. You know, people don't care about the brands, but now I think that's kind of you know, people will choose products and services kind of based on that. And, you know, as a millennial, and, you know, that whole trend of millennials coming in and millennial leadership coming in, that one I think is going to really explode. What are your thoughts?
Welcome to my marketing ethos 101, that almost everything has become a commodity because you can buy anything from anyone at any time, anywhere. So,
right.
And it's always just been buy what I'm selling. So now you have to say, well, wait a second. I've got to give people a reason to want to give a crap about what I'm doing. And you nailed it in terms. Yeah. So now you have to say, all right, well, what is that reason? And I find that I have a greater brand affinity for a smaller amount of brands, but I have a very high affinity for some of those brands. I think a great example for this would be anybody who purchases something from Lululemon. If you've ever seen it, their customer service is out of the world. Their product is out of the world. It's a community. It's a lifestyle. They are not a commodity because God knows you can buy yoga pants from anywhere. But there's something different when you put on those pair of pants, which, oh, by the way, are super expensive. But guess what? You put that on and you're like, you know what? These are the best fitting pants. And I loved the experience because the person who's helping me right there, they look like I want to look or that I look like. And I like that they have yoga in their studios at certain days. And all of a sudden, the narrative on one pair of yoga pants is multi-layered, where, God forbid, I would love to listen to a podcast from them or video. And then you start to see, I know they recently acquired Mirror. So then you're like, well, wait a second. What do they do now? They're elevating the lifestyle of everything. And that sort of mindset for me is, all right, well, how are you building relationships? Are you thinking about this being community driven? Are you mission driven? Are you value driven? Because those are the things. Even if I'm going to buy a hat off some random Instagram brand that targets me, but guess what? All of a sudden you're like, yeah, we donate 10% of something to something. And you're like, oh, that's kind of cool. Like I care more about the brand than I do, just as you said, is this going to be the fastest or quickest? I'm used to that. Like as you're saying that, I was thinking about Postmates versus Grubhub versus Uber Eats versus DoorDash. And you know how I choose between one of them? It's really, does which one of them have the restaurant that I want? I have zero loyalty whatsoever to any of them. And quite frankly, the only thing that they can do is decrease, because we've all had the experiences with each of them where we've had a negative experience. Like I will never use Postmates again because I used it once and it was a terrible experience. Well, guess what? They have no messaging geared towards me to say, here's why we do what we do. Here's an opportunity to talk to our CEO or a podcast that delivers value. So that's sort of where I am, which actually sort of goes to, all right, next question, the biggest challenges we see out there in the market. Because for everyone, they're going to say, we have excuses. No time, resources, budget, money. It's already built in there. But if you don't overcome those challenges, you're either going to innovate or die. So I'm curious to hear from your perspective, what challenges do you see in the broad market? Because I think we just identified one.
In terms of being authentic and genuine and just, you know, transparency, I think adds a layer, you know, increases it even more. I think, you know, being truthful, I think one of the campaigns that Grubhub came out with during this time was that they're going to be commission free, but then you go into the fine print and you learn that it's just deferred commissions, and it's like, it's kind of shitty, like it's a choice. The other night when I'm listening to Congress, grill these technology leaders, one of the questions was seeking their personal opinions, but it's interesting to see how their personal opinions influences the values of the entire organization. And it was, do you swear, do you promise that you won't like something around like their hiring practices, so like what they would consider like slavery labor practices in their factories, like in foreign countries and stuff like that. And like, do you promise not to, because they have the option to do it, but they all kind of said, yeah, they would never do that. And I think, as organizations grow, I just find it interesting that that kind of question was asked, to be honest with you, because I think it kind of goes in back to what I think is going to happen, or what should be happening, is more collaboration between probably private entities and our government system, because the value that these 4 tech leaders could bring is tremendous. And so if technology solves for convenience and on demand and solves everything that you want technology to do, streamline your operations, make shit more efficient, provide better customer experiences, technology is going to do that. So at what point then, so what's next, what's to come? And I think, building your brand around something that's going to resonate with your consumers is only going to make it a stickier product in the long run. And, probably create more happiness too. So
Yeah, for me, I can boil that all down to one word: intention. I believe the biggest challenge that is going to present itself is businesses being intentional about every aspect of their business, which sort of goes to what you're saying, because they're talking about hiring practices. Well, that's just intentional on one side of things, just like we're intentional about the messaging we have on social and with our webinars and with the way that we lead companies. And there's no longer, oh, wow, we didn't know this was going on in our company, or, oh, this is the way that things have always been. If you're doing something, you now are becoming accountable for everything. So now for a business, you really have to take a step back and say, all right, we need to be intentional about every single thing that we do, because quite frankly, the best of the best, we are all intentional about everything that we do, because everything is always within our control. We can make excuses for things, but guess what? Those are just excuses. The ones who really make things happen have a reason why they do everything that they do. And guess what? When you're intentional about all of this stuff, you're now in control. And I think what we are seeing right now is actually a lack of control in a lot of different areas for businesses. So the challenge is actually the opportunity, just like the book, The Obstacle is the Way by Ryan Holiday, one of my favorite books ever. That if you've got an obstacle in front of you, cool, let's be intentional about said obstacle. And now that becomes the way to make things better.
Definitely. It's, and it, and I think, like personally, I've had enough personal challenges during, COVID's just another one of those challenges. But I think, my uncle passed away a couple weeks ago, and one of the lessons that has stuck with me moving forward is like everyone and everything, whether your company or personal, is going to face like ongoing challenges. So I think with COVID, everybody can resonate with that. Everyone's going to be down. Everyone's going to be feeling depressed, cooped up inside. People are losing jobs. Budgets are getting cut. There's all these challenges in this world, but I think the people are the folks that continue to persevere. It's a story of perseverance and just continuing to identify those obstacles and just not giving up. Just keep overcoming and just keep going. And if you can ask yourself how, if you can answer the how you will do it, you will be fine. And just staying and keeping it simple, staying focused and keeping it simple.
Well, I will keep it simple and help you understand how I stay focused and positive during all of this. And the way that I do this, and this is an action item that every single person listening right now can do, is every morning I prime my mind. I write down or read a series of affirmations, gratitude, and things that help me remind myself of who I am and the person I'm going to be in the future. And you know what one of the things is that I write down, which I actually have right here? Choose to see opportunities. And why is that relevant? Because what you just said is, listen, we live in a world where a lot of things can go bad. You can dwell on the bad, or you can choose to see the opportunities. Where you lose your job, well, you know what that does? That gives you an opportunity to find your dream job. And there's always another side of things. And if you dwell on the negative, that's never going to get you to where you want to go. So my mindset is always, let's focus on the thing that I can do in this moment to get me to where I want to go. And what helps me do that is by setting my intentions every morning. Once again, crazy how this goes full circle. By writing down a series of things. I am worthy. I am flexible and fluid. I'm the happiest person in the world every single day. So every time someone has listened to this podcast, you can know I've read, I am the happiest person in the world. I've done that for years. So how does that work? You keep doing that over and over and over again to overcome the negativity and the challenges and the obstacles that are facing you as an individual or you as a business owner, because that's what is required in order for you to succeed. Is it easy? No, but you can be consistent about it. It costs no money, but once again, all it takes is a little intention out of you to say, all right, what do I need to do to get me to boot up, to be that person who's going to make sure that I make things happen?
Yeah. And I think, and realizing that you're responsible for that, because no one's going to like say and feel sorry for you if you wake up every morning and say you're going to do these things and you're going to go out and do it. But like, you are your biggest obstacle. I think that's the thing to remember. Like, everyone will, like, COVID's an obstacle, but a bigger obstacle is like yourself getting up in the morning and telling yourself that you can do it. I think, getting over that part is the biggest challenge.
It is. I can tell you there's certain times in my life that have been game-changing moments. And the moment in which I became self-aware and realized that I was accountable for everything going on in my life in all areas of my life is the biggest game changer. It is a gift that I wish that I could give to everybody else, because so often when doing podcasts or interviews, someone will say, Rob, who's your biggest competition? And I'm like, well, no one, because it's myself. Because I have to execute, I have to overcome, because no one's ever going to do this stuff for you. And I really wish people could understand this and I could give them that gift. When you realize that you are in complete control of every single thing going on in your life and your world, all of a sudden it goes from black and white to color, where you're like, wow, I can now do whatever I want. Doesn't mean it's going to be puppy dogs and rainbows, but you have an element of control, when right now a lot of people are feeling an element of no control.
I think so.
So Carson, I'm really excited about the future of FanFood, about the future of this podcast, where everything is going to go, because I know you are a tremendous leader. I know you have an amazing team behind you. I know that everybody is smart and passionate. You guys are forward thinking, and the best is yet to come. And here's how I want to leave this, with an ask for the audience. Do you have something that you would like to ask of the audience?
Do I?
Yes, you.
Put me on the spot. A new one.
Well, it is, because this is your opportunity to say, hey, if you're looking for this, or who would you like to connect with? How can we help you?
I mean, I think the biggest impact that we can create right now is if there is someone that's listening to this and they're exploring an online or mobile ordering solution that's commission free, where you can just get paid for every digital order and not get charged commissions for that, hit us up. Go check out our website. But the purpose of this podcast isn't for me to like sell our products and services, rather just to be helpful, right? To create an impact. So how do we help them create business owners and operators an overall better customer experience through digital? How are we doing that? And so if that's my goal, is to accomplish that. So.
And what I would like to say is, if anything we said today resonated with you, shoot an email, make a phone call, make a tweet, and get in contact with someone at FanFood. Just say what's up, because you never know what one conversation can lead to. You might not be ready yet, but you might say, you know what? I don't understand everything, but I'm willing to at least reach out and find a little bit more, because I have always found in my life, without fail, the times in which I have taken action have led to something good. Because remember, if you don't ask, the answer is always no. If you do nothing, nothing will happen. But if you reach out to FanFood and just say, hey, just wanted to say what's up, you just might be pleasantly surprised at what could happen.
Absolutely. You might be getting a DM from me. So
I love it. Carson, where can everybody connect with you?
As always, LinkedIn, or my personal email is carson@fanfoodapp.com. You can shoot me a personal note and I'll read it and try to best I can to respond. So appreciate all the feedback and comments, considerations.
And as always, I would love to hear from you about this episode. Did it cause you to think or take action? I'm curious to hear, what opportunities are you seeing in the market right now? You can hit up FanFood on Twitter @FanFoodOnDemand, on Instagram @FanFoodApp, or on LinkedIn. And as always, you can hit me up on all social media platforms @Rob Cressy.